Now, please welcome to the stage Geotab's Vice President, Data and Analytics, Mike Branch.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope everybody is having a terrific time here at Geotab Connect 2020. First of all, Dennis, wherever you are, you should know what an API is. We'll have that discussion later. I want to start today's talk off just with a quick story about what inspired this talk about elevating your data. So it all really started about 2 or 3 months ago. And we had a mid to large sized customer of ours walking through the office. And this customer had been with us for, 6 to 7 years, and they were walking through the office, and it was the CEO and his executive team. And he said, wow, I had no idea what you could do with this telematics data. And I thought to myself, I think we got a problem here. If we've had a customer of ours who's been with us for 6 to 7 years at that size that doesn't know what they can do with their data, and we have 50,000 customers across the globe, we need to show our customers and our partners how they can better elevate their data. And that's what this talk is about. I think there's really a couple of different buckets. When you look at why isn't telematics data reaching the boardroom, it really falls into 2 main areas. I think the first main area is that it's not even remotely on the executive's radar. They have no clue. There's a lack of visibility and a lack of awareness about the potential of all of this data. And I think the second area is that, the executive may have awareness about what's possible with the data, but they lack the time. They lack the expertise, and they lack the trust in the data. And I'd like to double down on that last one about trust in data, because it's really interesting. So a McKinsey study was done last year in 2019 that showed that 67% of CEOs, when presented with data, completely ignore that in their decision-making process and just went with intuition. Yet, a similar study done by BCG a couple of years ago shows that data-driven companies experience 20 to 30% more gains in EBITDA over non-data-driven companies. So what's going on with that? It's a little bit of a conundrum. But we see the same thing in our data as well, too, right? And we've seen that if you actually pay attention to your data, it does really pay. And I'm going to show you a bit of an example here. So the example I'm going to show you is we took all of our small fleets. So small fleets are under 20 in size is what we looked at. We looked over a 2-year period. And over that 2-year period, we looked at all the hazardous driving incidents and the erratic driving behavior. And we looked at the same fleets from the beginning of that 2-year period to the end of the 2-year period. And this doesn't really tell me anything. It's a random occurrence. There's no trend. I would have expected to see it decreasing. Yet, if you look at the top 10% of small fleets, the people who paid attention to their data, there was a 50% reduction in erratic driving. So if you pay attention to data and actually do pay attention, it does pay. For me, what this points to is that all signs point to we must elevate the importance of all of this data and strike that importance not only within the fleet, but to the boardroom as well, too. We already spend a lot of money on telematics from a safety perspective, from a productivity perspective, from a compliance perspective. Let's take that same investment and make sure it doesn't stay in fleet, but it gets to all the other areas of the business to really maximize your ROI. So how do we go about elevating this data and maximizing the ROI we get from it? I think there's 3 main things to take out of this. One is we have to establish trust and data maturity, okay? That's really important, and I'll tell you why. Number 2 is we have to empower an organization to innovate with all of this data. And number 3 is we have to put people first and solve real-world problems, not problems that are cooked up in a lab or anything, real-world problems. And the first thing I'm going to start off with is establishing this trust in your data and maturity. And I'm going to compare it to something. So this maturity of data lifecycle, I'm going to compare it to how we go through our growth phases as humans. And I've got a small little 2-year-old and a 4-year-old boy at home, and I oftentimes look at them and I say, what they're going through is similar to kind of what data is going through from an evolutionary perspective. So if we think about it, there's this maturity model for data. When we're first born, little babies, it's new and exciting. Everybody wants a piece of the action. Similarly to, I'm sure, a number of folks, when you put in a new system and you get all this data, oh my God, everybody in the organization has to have a piece of the action. Then you get to the toddler phase. Toddler phase is a little bit unpredictable, right? Similarly with data, if you're not dialed into some of the nuances within the data, it can seem a little bit unpredictable. But then what do we do with that toddler? We take that toddler to school, right? Take the toddler to school and make sure that they know right from wrong, that they're governed, they know the rules and regulations of the world in a similar way. We take data to school. We make sure we put it through a data governance program and make sure that it's governed very, very well. But even with all that governance, what do we know about school-age kids? They turn into teenagers. And teenagers are a little bit unpredictable as well, too. They don't understand the consequences of all of their actions. And in a similar way, too, if you're not careful with data, especially with artificial intelligence and ethics, you need to be sure that you understand what the consequence of those actions are. We've all seen mishaps with AI. They're all the time in the papers. Amazon in its recruitment policies had AI that was recruiting male engineers, and there was a bias there, so they quickly retracted that. So we must be very careful in this maturity phase of data. And we get eventually to this adult phase, and this adult phase, we've been around the block a few times, and we know what's going on. So we've been through these phases at Geotab, can certainly help you folks out as well, too. The second thing I'm going to point to is empowering your organization to innovate. So while this understanding of trust and data maturity is important, we have to get to that adult phase so that our executives have that trust. We have to empower our organization to innovate. And to do that, I'm going to walk you through a bit of a case study. And this case study is talking about Joe. Joe's the CIO of a municipality. He's a pretty tech-savvy guy, right? He doesn't know a whole lot about telematics. But Joe's got a lot of challenges from a lot of departments ahead of him. He's responsible for answering the fleet, roads and works, traffic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through a few different challenges that Joe has, and I'm going to show you how we can help empower his organization to innovate. So challenge number 1. Engineering receives complaints on a daily basis from the community about signal timing across the entire, across many corridors within the city. But they lack that real-world data to help them make any adjustments to that. So this is a perfect opportunity for us to show Joe how he can empower his organization using building blocks. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what these building blocks are. So many times people ask me, what can I actually do with this telematics data? I get GPS data, I get engine status data, I get accelerometer. What can I actually do with this? You need to take those and you need to build building blocks on top of that to help your organization innovate and accelerate. And these building blocks might be things like creating intersection insight metrics, weather, parking spot locations, U-turns, you name it. And then what do you do with that? You accelerate and you create applications on top of that. You never want to go from the bottom all the way to the top. You have to have these building blocks that help your organization accelerate. So if I'm Joe, I'm not thinking about going from the bottom to the top. If I create these building blocks in the middle, and you think about that for all of our 50,000 customers out there, create those building blocks that will allow you to accelerate. And I'm going to show you an example of what we did at Geotab. Neil spoke a little bit about this in his keynote as well, too. But let's look at intersection insights as a building block, okay? Let's have a look at that. When you first start off with an intersection, if you look at OpenStreetMaps, that kind of thing, you see 4 little points that constitute an intersection. Roll into that telematics data, and you start seeing all these GPS points in and around an intersection, okay? It may be people going through the intersection, parking around the intersection, that kind of thing. Then what we've done is we've taken artificial intelligence and we've created the actual geometry of these intersections. So that now constitutes a building block. And I'll tell you why that's important. Understanding that exact geometry gives us the ability to look at wait times, to look at number of stops at each intersection. And this is ubiquitously across North America, across the globe, where we have all of this data. You don't need to install a traffic camera there or whatnot. And then what do you do with that? You build an application on top of that, right? And that application is what we worked on with our MVP team for the RTC in Vegas, where you can go across all of Vegas, any traffic-controlled intersection, and look at wait time, signal timing, and all of that, right? Again, building blocks allows us to do that. So when you're thinking about how to accelerate with innovation in your organization, think about building blocks. Challenge number 2. Fleet and finance want to find the most fuel-efficient vehicles for their mix. And they want to know how they compare when benchmarked with other fleets of similar sizes. Well, in order to figure out how you're benchmarked across other fleets, you have to first develop this world of similar fleets. And many of you may have heard me talk about this in the past, but we have to create a world of like fleets to determine how we can compare vehicles. And when we're talking about like fleets, we've talked about this in the past before, vehicle vocation is a huge importance, right? Understanding the movement patterns of the vehicle. And this, again, was a building block that we created a year and a half ago, right? So we understand long haul versus hub and spoke delivery, that kind of thing. Geography also comes into play. So does speed profile, and so does the vehicle-based data such as type, horsepower, engine displacement, that kind of thing. And then what we do, we put all of that in a giant AI model that kind of looks like this, and you saw this on the first day with Neil, and it looks pretty crazy, right? Each one of these points, we've got about 100,000 points in this specific model. Each dot represents a specific vehicle, and the proximity of vehicles to one another give us an idea of how similar they are according to all that other stuff, right? But what's interesting is that if you look at the taxi vertical, all the taxis cluster together. If you look at a municipal vertical, all the municipal vehicles cluster together. So when I'm comparing like fleets and doing benchmarking and providing recommendations, I can do it in a very intelligent way, driven by artificial intelligence. But you may say, okay, that's great, Mike. Well, what do I do with this? I'll tell you what you do. You activate with our MVP team. And we did this with Enterprise, right? So our MVP team, I'll talk about a little bit later, worked with Enterprise. And what we're able to do is now look at these comparable fleets and from a fuel economy perspective, tell you, okay, well, is it better to be driving a Ford F-150 in the Rocky Mountains for a service and delivery vehicle, or is it better to be driving a Chevy Silverado? An application, again, built on building blocks from our MVP team in coordination with a partner. Challenge number 3. Fleet operations wants this war room type dashboard, right? You want to be able to see all your snow plows in the winter, and you want to be able to see all the lawn cutting vehicles in the summer, or you name it, just on this amazing dashboards in your war room. Well, I'm pleased to announce, and Dennis actually, same guy who forgot about the API, did a presentation on this earlier today. And it's a really good building block for Joe to be able to enable both his developers in addition to any partners looking to build on top of the ecosystem. What it is a real-time map, all open sourced, that you can plot hundreds, if not thousands of vehicles moving in real time on the map. Any exception you can plot in there. Any engine status data you can plot on there. And you can do playback, and you can do real time and live, and what's best of all, it's fully open source. So what this gives you the power to do now is take this and build any other applications on top of it. Geotab has done the work of creating the open source platform for you to build on top of. Again, a building block that will help accelerate innovation for Joe in his business. Challenge number 4, I'm sure nobody experiences this ever. Our municipal roads are in disrepair. and the Works department needs to know where they need to focus. It's a pretty daunting challenge. Well, I'm pleased to announce Geotab Ignition. And Geotab Ignition, for those of you who know what data.geotab.com was all about, all the aggregate data sets, Geotab Ignition now takes that to a new level and allows you to visualize that. What we found was great about data.geotab.com is you get all of your data, aggregate data, everything from dangerous driving areas in cities, intersection, insight, weather conditions. What do you do with it? With Ignition, you can visualize this very easily on a map. With Ignition, what you can do is you can take sample queries, all SQL based, you plot it, and all of a sudden, you're able to see things I think we're going to show here. How the road impediment areas within San Diego, you can jump into this and you can see areas where there are road quality issues. And you can zoom in and explore. This kind of tool was a lot harder to do before because we made you take the data and put it into your own platform and actually do this kind of work yourselves. We made it a heck of a lot easier to do, and we're going to be building on top of this platform. So any new data sets on data.geotab.com will leverage this. APIs will leverage this as well, too. Challenge number 5. My colleagues across multiple departments keep asking questions that might be easy for an analyst to answer, but I struggle to have all my data in the right platform. So some things as a CIO that Joe might be asked are, he may have his environmental services department saying, hey, I want to activate on this project. And in this project, I want to equip my vehicles with air quality sensors, and I want to determine which vehicles are the best to equip with air quality sensors. He may have the operations department simply saying, I need to tie together telematics data together with all this other line of business data I want to put in Tableau or Power BI or whatnot. He gets asks from IT and GIS, and they simply want to plot all of the telematics data together from the road network so that they can figure out new roads that are coming to play and integrate that with their GIS systems. And then a partner might want to really help out Joe and the CIO to figure out if he can determine a model for predictive maintenance. Well, how does he activate on all of this? Well, you can do that with the data science package, which we worked on and released mid-2019. And with the data science package, you get all of your telematics data in one area. You can start compiling that with other line of business data to really make some intelligent decisions across the board. Very powerful for analysts. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be giving you a tool later this year to take Geotab Ignition, all that visualization, and connect it to your data science package. So now you can do things one step better than the environmental services department wanted you to do. And if you want to find all areas in a city that wouldn't be covered for air quality from a school perspective, you can see which schools might be missing as you're looking at this air quality coverage map, right? So it allows you a lot of power to take both the Geotab data with other line of business data. Challenge number 6. As part of your data governance and smart city strategy, you need to ensure that the city is constantly pulling in the right data from all of your assets. It's no good to you if you've got a vehicle asset that's providing one kind of data one day and another kind of data the next. It needs to be consistent for data governance in any smart city strategy. Again, I'm pleased to announce this is available right now in MyGeotab, our data access tool, Geotab data access tool. We spoke about this a little bit before in an earlier session today. And what this gives you the ability to do is to type in a make and model and figure out what the accessibility looks like for that make and model. From VIN, odometer, seatbelt, and fuel, some basic parameters. And then we're going to go beyond that as well. We're going to look at roadworthiness and all these other things. And this is a Geotab-only tool, but we're going to turn this into a multi-stakeholder engagement as well, right? And where it's not just about access from the OBD port, but it's about vehicle data access in general from APIs and cloud integrations. Challenge number 7. This one's a little bit of a different one. So I've got a ton of different use cases for my telematics data. I just don't know how to activate. How do I activate on all this? Well, we're here to help you elevate with that. And we can do that from a few different perspectives. Leverage our Geotab partner ecosystem. You guys are here at Connect. I'm sure you've had some amazing conversations already. talk to the partners out there. They've got some amazing data science acumen, analyst acumen. They're a great resource for you. Number 2, we've got a new focus in solutions engineering on big data. So there's a big data team within solutions engineering that can really help you elevate. Number 3, we've got an MVP team that is focused on creating minimum viable products with customers, and that's Amir's team that he runs. And the difference between the two here is the MVP team focuses more on product scalability, more complex things, whereas the solutions engineering team focuses more on service, a little bit less complex, less uncertainty. So you have got these 3 resources, and combine that with our data boot camps. We do 3 to 4 of these a year. One's going on right now in San Diego. We had 60 people attend. Amazing workshops all the way through from predictive maintenance pipelines to intelligent zoning. Really, really crucial stuff to help you elevate, help our ecosystem elevate with what we're doing with data together. And then coming this year in 2020, we need to do a better job of getting these MVPs out to you, our customers and partners. So we'll be bringing in a labs-based environment into an add-in that allows you to get the newest and latest MVPs. We haven't done a good job of that to date. We need to get these MVPs out to our ecosystem. So Joe, our CIO, he's connected people. He's elevated data. And he's empowered his organization to innovate in 3 different ways: by these building blocks, by these tools, and the support from the ecosystem. He's put people first to solve real-world problems across the board from multiple different stakeholders, right? And now Joe has gone beyond fleet. Not only is it a fleet-centric application, it goes to every area of the business. So when you talk about expanding the ROI from that one device that goes into a vehicle, this is how you do it. So you got to decide as partners, as customers, where do you want to play? Do you want to play as an advocate? There's so many different areas you can play. Just by being here and understanding and having these conversations, you can become an advocate for all this. Do you want to become a translator? Do you want to recognize these opportunities and work with a partner, work with the Geotab ecosystem team to develop these MVPs? Or do you want to go all in and become an expert and develop that AI acumen, that data acumen to create some amazing new features and products on top of the ecosystem? Now, we couldn't do all of this without our amazing partner ecosystem. You guys have seen it across the board. But we also couldn't do all of it without some amazing vendors that we work with. And one of those vendors is Google Cloud. And we do a lot of stuff with them. And I'm pleased to announce Chad Jennings on stage, who's going to come and talk to you about how he's helped us throughout this data journey. Chad?
Hey, thanks, Mike.
Cheers.
Thanks. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. As Mike said, my name is Chad, and as I was sitting backstage, I actually wasn't getting nervous until my wife sent me a text, and she said that my kids, Amelia and Teddy, are watching the live stream, so now I'm nervous. Okay, first slide, please. Splendid. So, as Mike mentioned, Google and Geotab have been doing a lot of work together. And some of the products that underpin how Geotab works are various ones inside of Cloud and BigQuery. And one of the things we did, one of the interesting things we did with BigQuery recently was to add geospatial support. So first-class support for data types and functions. And so I'm going to talk to you about how putting that capability inside of BigQuery really brings very big data infrastructure to GIS, which I'm hopefully going to convince you by the end of this talk is a big deal. I wanted to set a little context here, and so we're going to build a little bit of a pyramid hierarchy. By the way, I have massive pyramid envy from Mike's graphic. Mine is like way not as slick. But any pyramid with like infrastructure at the bottom, the most important part, partner and customers at the top, and in the middle here is Geotab. And so what Geotab has been really fantastically successful at doing is being expert at this Google Cloud and BigQuery infrastructure, and then also being expert in the use cases that you all need them to provide solutions for. So all of today's launches are based on these core products from Google. So that's why this is relevant to you all, and how the assets or the attributes of these products percolate through to benefits. So we covered me already, but I have a colleague that I've asked to come and join me on stage today. And my colleague will be essentially the embodiment or the personification of big data infrastructure, or the perception of big data infrastructure. Chomper's the angry chihuahua, and so he is quite intimidating, a little bit deranged, actually, with that crazy right eye. I get a little nervous when I put this up, and I made the slide. Now, Chomper's is going to be a different animal, right? Because one of the main value propositions of Google Cloud is that we take care of taming the big data and cloud computing infrastructure for you so that you can just worry about your data. So Chomper's going to be a different animal by the end of this talk. So a far less intimidating individual than Mr. Chompers is our CEO, and Google's mission is to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. And if you're operating with a mission that big, and if you're operating with products this big, Google has 9 products with more than 1 billion users each. You had better be investing in big data infrastructure, and you had better be really good at scaling it. And we are both. So over the last 3 years, Google has invested $47 billion. Yes, that is not a typo. $47 billion on big data infrastructure to support all of the products, from search to YouTube to cloud, that Google provides. We're building this out all over the world, and security and reliability are really built into the fabric of how we make these data centers. So we'll focus on reliability here. So this is a picture of a data center in the middle of the United States, and the buildings in the far background there house the computers and the storage and the networking hardware. I want to talk about reliability here. You see the infrastructure down at the front. Those are a bank of generators. And so if power goes out to this portion of the country, Google can switch from land power to generated power in just a few hundred milliseconds. And in most cases, customers won't even notice a service interruption. So, I won't describe the security features here, but Google pays very close attention to how these data centers get materialized in the world. One of the ways these data centers get materialized in the world is through the products. So I wanted to talk just a moment about BigQuery. So it is Google Cloud's enterprise data warehouse. Some of the unique things about it here on the right are that it's fully managed and serverless. And what that buys you, as users of Geotab's products who use BigQuery, is that you can bring virtually any amount of data to BigQuery and just run jobs on it. You don't have to provision resources. You don't have to tell Google or Geotab how many computers you want to use. You just bring your data, you stream it from your vehicles, and then you run your analysis on it. We also have some other features that we think are unique about the product. We've been investing a lot in real-time and streaming analytics. We've got some built-in machine learning that I think got covered in the boot camps earlier today. And we've also been investing a lot in high-speed queries using our BI engine. So those are some fun toys. Perhaps a little more germane to this audience, this is a fun toy, having geospatial analytics right inside of BigQuery. We were the first cloud data warehouse to have first-class support for geotypes and functions. If you all use PostGIS, the syntax is exactly the same, so migrating your queries will be trivial. So we're very excited about this, and we're excited about how this supports Geotab. And so as we think about the product, we want to make it as useful to as many different types of people and as many different types of problems as possible. So we're going to build a little map here, not as cool as the map on the slide before, but a map nonetheless. The center of the map has core data warehousing functions like Partitioning, these are table stakes. You just have to do this. You have to do it well to have this thing be a useful tool. But then you get into some of the fun stuff. So we have ML. We invented some new SQL verbs that do machine learning. As I mentioned, we've been investing in streaming analytics. We have petabytes of public data sets that you can just arrive on the platform and query and use. And we've added GIS. So the product team, of which I am one, is busy making these features available for you. But one of the cool things about just being at Google is that you can also, or I can also bring some Google-wide features in so that it's not just BigQuery differentiating factors, but things from the rest of Google help differentiate us as well. Things like Earth Engine, which I'll talk about just in a little bit moment. You can also have Google Maps APIs to enrich your data. And all of this is built on, if we can provide you the capability where you just concentrate on your data, concentrate on the problems, plus we have all of these cool toys, well, analysis toys and APIs, we'll call them toys for this crowd, then we can really increase the scale and the impact of your work. And here is an outstanding bunch of people to increase the scale and impact of their work. So I'm going to talk a little bit about a global geospatial analysis performed by one of our customers, Global Fishing Watch. So 20% of fishing activity is illegal, unreported, or in general just nefarious. And the Associated Press won a Pulitzer Prize a couple years ago for exposing the fact that some fishing fleets were actually kidnapping people off the land to use them as slave labor on their fishing boats. I mean, this is terrible. And there's a lot of ocean out there, so if this happens, how do the authorities go and find it? And so Global Fishing Watch aimed to try to help that using data and analytics. And so we'll go through a little bit about how they solved the problem. So they leveraged two products inside of Google. The top one here is BigQuery, and this is an animation showing the position of ships out on the ocean. So law-abiding ships are required, very much like vehicle telematics here, they have to broadcast their position, their velocity, their track, et cetera. And that is called AIS, Automatic Information System. And so you can read that and then just plot where the vehicles say they are. Excellent. These are the good guys. Now how do we find the bad guys? The image on the bottom here is a screenshot of Google Earth Engine, which is a global scale image analysis product. In this image, it's the Mediterranean, so the water is dark. You can see the boot of Italy right in the middle. And then you see these streaks. These are the reflections off the surface or off the hulls of the ships from the Sentinel radar from space. And so each one of these little streaks on the map is actually a collection of points as a boat moves, across the ocean. So what they did was this. They have got the map of the good guys in the top here, and they've got the map of everyone, because you can't hide from the radar, on the bottom. And so they put both of these into BigQuery and then essentially did a huge diff operation. So if you subtract out the good guys from everyone, you're left with the people who are too small to be required to report, and you're left with the bad guys, which is the dark fishing fleet. So this is a snippet along the coastline here of some of these vessels that don't come up where they should. And so they were able to work with authorities to start to poke into what these dots were and how they're using it. And so they're also able to do this entire analysis on a global scale all at once. And that is really incredibly cool, right? Think about that. They're taking global vector data and global imagery data and essentially joining them, in this case doing a diff, all over the world and repeatedly so that they can keep their maps of the dark fleet up to date. So Google and BigQuery are enabling global analysis. And to do that, remember my colleague, Chomper is now a tamed animal. And that is the primary benefit that Geotab gets by being on top of GCP, that you all get by using Geotab's tools, is that we'll take care of the infrastructure, we'll take care of those big data headaches. Bring 10 petabytes of data to BigQuery, that's not a problem. and you guys just worry about your work. And so if you'll permit me, I'll give you just a short story here, in that I really believe we're at an inflection point, because the value proposition of I'll take care of the infrastructure while you do your geospatial analysis has not existed in the world before. At the same, analogously, you remember about 10 years ago when Google was taking all the pictures to power Street View, we didn't have the ability to look at those images and pull out metadata, like that Promode is at the corner of the Rue of Saint-Germain and whatever the other street is there. And so since we've been able to develop that, and then we can provide much richer mapping services because we know where these brands are, or we can interpret where the traffic signs are, et cetera. And so we were able to drastically increase the utility of the Google Maps products. And that drastic increase is, I think, where we are right now with geospatial analysis, in that, really the constraints have been taken off your imagination. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing what Geotab continues to provide and innovate on top of our tools. And I'm even more excited to hear and see what you all generate. And okay, that's the end of my little talk. And with that, I'd like to invite Mike back out, because we have one more cool, neat thing to tell you about. There you go.
Thanks, Chad. So we talked about all these different ways that we can help you elevate with data. We'd like to give you one more way that you can elevate your data, and that's a great partnership that we have with Google Cloud and those members who have subscribed for Data Science Package. I'll let Chad talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so for the case where you've got data coming from Geotab, and then you've got other data around your company that you want to relate to that vehicle telematics data, you can now team up with Google, and we can supply you, essentially data engineering services through our partner network to help you get that data into a similar repository so that you can do your analysis on it.
Yeah. And if you want to explore this, you can do so through reaching out to our solutions engineering team here, okay? So you reach out to the solutions engineering team here, and what we're going to do is we're going to hook you up with Google professional services, and this is, again, here geared at helping you elevate your data if you have the data science package. And the last thing I'd like to leave you with today is, if it will show up, apparently not, but for 2020, guys, the message is elevate your data. We can go so much further beyond what we have right now as a collective. And let's do this for 2020, guys. And have a great rest of the Connect conference, and enjoy the boat cruise tonight. Cheers.
Thank you very much.